the agents who are like on average probably selling the most in your area, they're selling a lot of lower price points also because they're giving themselves the benefit of more opportunities to sell houses. Then you aim for 7 at $1.5 million and one of them doesn't sell. And now your income, you've lost 1/7 of your income. That's why it's so scary to rely on those smaller numbers, is because if one of them doesn't pan out, then you're crushing your potential. So you want to aim for like, I want to aim to do a transaction every month. That's a great goal to start with because it's going to help you have more clarity around what to do every day. Good to see everybody. Really excited because today what I'm going to do is in less than 2 weeks time now, 2 weeks as of yesterday, we're jumping into the next quarter. And what I love to do this time of the year is really just think like, what do I want to get done the next quarter? How do I want to set up my planning so that I can think about the next 12 weeks, the next 3 months, and really drill down on the numbers, understanding how much GCI am I trying to get done in the business? What is that going to require of me in terms of marketing efforts, in terms of follow up on calls, etc. And then the other thing I'll really think about is how do I work on the business and not just in it? Because you guys know, like, we're in a sales business where every single day our goal is to list and sell houses. But maybe some of you are also team leaders where your job is not just to list and sell houses. You also need to build out operations side of your business and the administration side. Like, how do you actually close out transactions? Who's helping you with your paperwork? And if you have other agents involved, like, how do you train them, educate them? There's a lot that can be going into this business to actually work on it, not just in it. So what I'm going to share is a couple things. I'm going to quickly throw up my screen here, and I'm just going to give you guys a high level overview to show you at a glance how I think about quarterly planning and what that looks like for me. And I'm going to show you actually a brand new system that I've been using. I've been reading through this book called The 12-Week Year, and it's this philosophy of rather than trying to think about your whole year in advance and using like a Keller Williams 411, if you guys are familiar with this idea of break your big 1 year down into your 1 month, and then break that down into your 4 weeks. What if you gave yourself a 12-week year? And that's really quarterly planning in a nutshell. And I think there's a lot of liberty in trying not to think about an entire year and just going, what am I going to get done this quarter? How am I going to break it all down? And then what we're going to spend the bulk of our time doing is actually looking at the numbers. Like, if you're trying to do, $500,000 this year, or you're trying to do $1 million, what do you need to do in terms of how many appointments you need to generate, how many phone calls you need to be on, etc. So I'm going to break it down step by step. All of this is borrowing principles from The Millionaire Real Estate Agent and that book that I was just referencing. So I'm going to need a volunteer at some point here to give me their GCI goal, and we'll run through it. A little recap on me if some of you haven't met me before or attended any of these trainings, because this is just my third training. Number one, super excited to be here with you guys. Number two, everything that I'm sharing today, I've also got a YouTube channel where I give away all this information for free that you guys can go check out. Just go search up my name, Jake Nicole, and the YouTube is like Jake Nicole Team, something like that. Now, a bit of background on me. I'm with eXp Realty. In the last 2 years, 2.5 years now, I got licensed and became a real estate agent. My first year in the business was 2022. I sold something around 35 houses. Again, I've got a YouTube video with a full breakdown of exactly where those transactions came from, how much GCI I did. I did something like $750,000 in GCI my first year in the business. And then my second year, which was last year, I did 850. I did something like 59 to 61 transactions. And the best part about that is I only added one team member last year who joined me kind of later into the year. So yeah, tons of progress. Excited to share how I won some, awards with eXp and have had all this awesome recognition. And I share none of that to brag. I share it to give you context today that I'm going to share practically exactly what I am doing, boots on the ground, active as a real estate agent. So, okay, number one, when it comes to planning, I will quickly share my screen here. We're going to flip over to this right here. Emmanuel, you can see my screen there, buddy?
Yes, I can. Looking great.
Okay. So here is how I lay out my quarterly planning. And what I do is really simple. I lay out in a nutshell, what are the personal and what are the business goals that I want to do? And I just reformatted this so it's not all filled in, but you can see for Q1, here is how I outline all the things that I want to get done. Is number one, I have a deals written target. How many deals do I actually want to write? Okay. And then I've got a number attached to that. So if I personally want to, do 300K in GCI a quarter, then I'm going to write that in there and I'm going to have a full understanding and a breakdown of what that looks like, which is mainly what we're going to focus on today. But I just want you guys to get some quick quarterly high level planning. Then the other thing I do is I'll have my personal goals of like, what are the things that I want to get done that quarter? And then I'll have things like, what are the business objectives that I have? I used to have more categories where I'd be like business, financial, personal, spiritual, etc. And I found it a little bit overwhelming to look at this and really be able to see into the future. And then the goal is you just break these down into, okay, this month, what am I going to get done in order to move forward on these plans? So I'm going to break down each month, have these categories right here. So you can see this is my January to March quarter, right? And then I'm going to write down in here, what am I going to get done each of those months? And then I break it down into the weeks. All right. So you can see I've kind of hidden the other weeks, weeks 1, 2, because we're already in week 3 of March. And, you're writing your goals into there and you're looking ahead at the quarter. So for this upcoming quarter, the goal is write 300K of GCI and deals written. And then we're going to look at this in a second in terms of what that looks like for numbers. It's things like I'm building out an education program for our agents. We're launching a couple new things. I'm fixing some operational challenges we have. And I'm going to get really detailed in, descriptions as I go through this of like, what is it that I want to get done? So just to give you guys a quick example of the 411 kind of approach, if you haven't seen this before, is 411s typically, this is what they look like, right? You've got your yearly goals, you've got your monthly goals, and then you break that down into what do I need to get done this week. The challenge that I find with this is those yearly goals are so big and ambitious. We tend to have a bias towards like, I'm going to make it up in Q2, Q3, maybe I'm going to leave it all for Q4. And the better way to do this is to go every 12 weeks, every quarter, I am going to move towards those objectives and really get things done. So here's what I want to do. I want a volunteer. This is my crazy little spreadsheet that I put together that breaks down, if you want to do $1 million, how many deals do you actually need to do? How many listing appointments do you need to have? How many buyer appointments do you need to have in order to hit those targets? And what I'd love to do is actually have somebody that wants to volunteer their objective, their number, and I'll walk through this with you and chat through it as we go. And then I'd also, if anybody's got any questions, by the way, I know I'm cutting you off there for 1 second, but if anybody else has any questions about, hey, Jake, when it comes to planning, can you give us some other tips? Just drop a comment and I'll come back to that in a minute. Awesome. Who is the person that wanted to jump in and share their goals there?
I will. If that person doesn't unmute first.
Amazing. So we got Candace there, right?
Yes.
Amazing. Candace, so good to meet you, my friend. How you doing? Where are you joining in from today?
From Alpharetta, Georgia, which is just a little north of Atlanta.
Super cool. I'm just trying to make sure I can see you on my screen here. And how is the market over where you are?
It's I always say it's week by week, community by community, street by street, and house by house. So awesome. We are starting to see buyers poking out a little bit, which is good. We still don't have enough inventory, but that's going to continue. So we're just dealing with it.
For sure. And then if you don't mind helping just give some perspective too, when it comes to your goal for your GCI for this year, what kind of goal are you going after? What does it look like for this year?
So I'd like to have 150,000.
Awesome. So you want to do 150K. And so I'm going to put that into this category right here. And when it comes to last year, if you don't want to share this, that's totally okay. Where did you end up last year? Just to give me an idea.
At 95.
Oh, good for you. That's awesome. So you're looking to grow by a good amount, like over 50%. So
yeah,
that's a totally achievable target. And last year with that 95K that you did, how many transactions did you end up having to do in order to get to that number?
I think I did 7 transactions.
Okay. So nice. So you have a pretty good.
Wait a minute. I had, sorry, some of that, it was more like about 70,000 because I had some income from other sources. Sorry, I was thinking about my tax income.
No worries at all. So would it be fair to say at 70,000 that you sold something like $3.5 million worth of real estate? What's your average commission that you make on each property?
I'm going to say 12,000.
12,000. And as a percentage, what percent do you tend to get? Is it 2%, 3% in your market?
3%.
3%. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to punch 3% in here. And this tells me that you essentially sold about $2.5 million worth of real estate. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So at 150K, you're looking to double what you did last year. And that means that you got to sell $5 million worth of real estate. Here's where this gets really cool, Candace, is we want to take these numbers, like I want to do 150K in GCI, and we want to start with, well, how much real estate do I have to sell? So looking at this right here, you got to sell $5 million worth of real estate. And there is an infinite number of ways that you can do it. But like, let's break it down really simple. You could sell one $5 million house. Probably not the best idea to put all your eggs in one basket, and also probably very difficult to also get a $5 million listing because there's a lot of competition in the luxury category. Or you could sell $2.5 million houses. You could sell $5 $1 million houses, and so on. What's the average price point of a house in your area that you sold last year?
Well, it's not my average, but the average is about 630, I think.
And what's your average?
My average is more like around 515.
Super cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in here 515,000. Okay. And right away, this is going to punch out that you need to do 10 deals in order to hit your $5 million.
You didn't even listen to that when you're fucking laying on the fucking floor.
We're going to mute that guy if we can.
What was I doing? I know I laid.
It's Julio. Nice. So we're going to need to do 10 transactions. Is that sounding about right for you there, Candace?
Yes.
Okay. So I like to break this down really systematically because the last thing you guys want to think when you're doing sales every day, here's what I think is the biggest killer for your production, is you don't want to wake up and it's Tuesday morning, or you wake up tomorrow and it's Wednesday morning, and you ask yourself the world's worst question, which is, what should I do today? As soon as you ask yourself that, something's broken. Do you know what I mean, Candace? Where you wake up and you're like, like, how do I move and shake today? How do I make stuff happen? And maybe you can relate to this, Candace, because this is what happens to me, is it can cripple me from taking enough action because I get in my own head. I'm like, there's a million things that I could do. It's the paradox of choice, and I find it totally overwhelming. Is it just me, Candace, or does that ever happen to you?
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. So here's how we want to eliminate that. We want to have at least, and you guys have probably heard this a million times, and you've heard it a million times because it's true, and I am constantly fighting for this, which is you want to have 90 minutes to 2 hours of time where you just prospect each day, you move things forward, okay, in the business. There's like you following up with people, following back with people. Then there's also just like, how do I get in front of more people and generate more business? So here's what your goals tell me, Candace, is number one, you need to do one deal a month. If you do one deal a month, you will surpass your target of 10 deals. You'll end up doing 12. But right now, your target is you need to do one deal a month. Now, if you haven't done the one deal a month leading up to today, meaning you've done 3 deals leading up to March, it means starting in April, you'll need to do one deal every month plus an extra deal to hit your 10, right? So next month, you might need to do 2. Every month after that, you're going to do 1. And when it comes to this breakdown, here's where this gets interesting. And for all of you guys watching, this is straight out of The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And that book is totally considered like the Bible for real estate agents for a reason, is because it does such a good job of systematically breaking it down to like, what do you need to do right now? So that's what we're going to talk through. So depending on your close ratio of each of these things, we'll get more complicated in a minute. Here's how this breaks down. You want to get 7 listings essentially, and you want to have 7 buyers that you're working with. Okay. In order to get that, it means you need to be going on 2 appointments a month, and it means you need to have 17 leads a month. Now that breaks down into, you need to go on 10 seller appointments this year, and you need to go on 10 buyer appointments, which means monthly, you only need to do so many appointments every single month. Okay. This is saying like you just need 1 seller appointment and 1 buyer appointment every single month. Now, these numbers, Candace, are actually so low that I would encourage you to actually aim higher in order to have more conversations and more going on, because these numbers are actually so low in terms of what you need to do in order to get that business that I don't know that it's motivating or inspiring enough. And here's why I can say that with a straight face. The very first year in real estate, I had a $350,000 target. And that target was based on a high producing agent who was a friend that was like, hey man, like you should set your target higher. I, like you, Candace, was like, I want to do like 150 grand, $200,000. I'd be super happy if I could make that much money in my first year in real estate. That would seem like a big achievement. And they were like, you need to aim higher. And then I aimed for 350. And the truth is, I thought that number was going to be so difficult to hit that I over executed. I executed at the level of like what $1 million a year producer would do. And because I did that level of execution, which I thought was required to hit 350, I ended up doing 750 my first year. Okay. And like, that's legitimately my first 12 months in the business. By May or something, my first year in the business, I had saved $400,000 in my corporate account. And I was like, this is insane. And all of that was because I did this. Like, I built this little thing we're looking at back then when I was starting. And this is exactly how I broke it down. So for you, do I have permission, Candace, to mess with your numbers a little bit and just see what it would look like if we did more?
Sure.
Okay. So let's say we were going to double it and you were going to do 300 grand in GCI. Okay. Here's what that breaks down to. Okay. Now, instead of 10 houses, you need to sell 17 houses. Okay. We're going to quickly change these numbers though, because I'm realizing you said your average price point was more like 515 and we're crunching these numbers at a much higher level. So everything's about to get way scarier because we need to sell way more houses. But let's roll with that for a second, because you have a 3% average commission, which is awesome. Over here where I am in the Toronto GTA market, our house prices are way higher, our commission's less. Typically, when you're helping someone buy a house, you get a 2% commission. If you're the listing agent, you get like 2.5% if you're good at negotiating. A lot of listing agents still just take 2%. So they'll charge 4% on a listing, they'll offer 2% to the buyer agent, and they'll keep 2% for themselves. Okay. So breaking down your deals, you need to do 19 deals, all right, at $515,000 a house that you're selling, which means, look at this, you need to do 2 deals a month, okay, which means at an average closing rate of like 70%, depending on what your closing rate is, you need to do 3 deals a month. Let's say your closing rate is like 50% of the time you're closing deals on the buying side and on the selling side, okay? It's just going to mean you need more leads and you need more appointments, right? So now it means you got to go on 5 appointments a month, okay? And half of them are going to be sellers, half they're going to be you connecting with buyers. 5 appointments a month, which to get those 5 appointments, you need to generate 46 leads a month, okay? Which is 12 leads per week, which is 2 leads per day. This business, guys, is totally just a numbers game. It's like if I said, if I flip a coin, what's the odds that it's heads or tails? We would all say it's 50-50. But what happens is the 50-50 percentage actually takes a lot of coin flips typically for it to actually start to look like 50%. You might get lucky and flip a heads and flip a tails and it's a perfect 50%. But every flip after that, you're going to have like, you're going to have percentages that don't equal 50% for a really long time, because you get into like the nitty gritty of like 47% because you flipped it a bunch of times. And usually what happens is you flip a coin and it's tails, 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 heads, heads, tails, 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 heads, 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 tails, heads, tails. Like it's all over the place. The reason I'm using that as the analogy is that it's the same with business. You're going to go on an appointment and you're going to win the listing appointment. You're going to go on the next one. You're going to win it. Then you're going to go on 5 in a row and you're going to lose all of them. Then you're going to go on the next 10 and you're going to win them. Like it's totally this numbers game. And what we need is we actually need volume in order to see the patterns of success, which is the reason, Candace, I said to you, you probably don't want one $5 million listing or one $10 million listing, because if it doesn't work out, now you're zero. When if you had 10 $1 million listings and one of them doesn't work out or 2 of them don't work out, you're not zero. You're still a higher percentage of winning, right? And the likelihood that you're able to move those price points is actually so much greater. So you at a $500,000 house, we just got to stack the odds with more appointments, more opportunities. And the reason I don't want you to worry right this second about like, Jake, how do I get those leads? How do I get those appointments? Is number one, you're in a program right now where you're learning how to maximize and increase you getting leads, which is awesome. But the more important thing is you need to know what your target is, what you're aiming at, so that you have something to measure it against. Okay. So is all this making sense, Candace?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you being our guinea pig and being so transparent, because I know it's intense to have just like, hey, double your GCI goal, right? It can be even frustrating because you're like, Jake, you make it sound like it's really easy and you had this big success story, but like it's hard where I am. I'm a really big believer that if you aim higher, you're going to expect way more of yourself, because you're not going to really believe that you can do that. So you're going to go like, if I'm going to achieve that, I have to take a lot more action. And there's a compounding effect with your actions where it'll actually benefit you more to aim higher. Okay. So if your goal is 2 leads a day, now you can start to frame reference points around, okay, 7 days a week. If I need 2 leads a day, how do I do that? Maybe I'm running some paid advertising. Maybe I'm also door knocking X number of days a week. And on those days that I door knock, I actually get like 4 leads each day that I door knock, but I only do it 2 or 3 days a week. And you're going to do the math on like, how am I going to do that? You're going to host an open house every single weekend if you can. If you don't have listings, you're going to reach out to other agents and say, can I host open houses for you? And go host their open houses on Saturdays if they're already doing it on Sundays, and try and get more traffic and more leads and more buyers and like whatever it takes to hit these numbers. And that way you don't have to ask yourself each day, Candace, what am I going to do? You're like, my goal is I just need 2 leads today. That's it. And how am I going to do that? Hopefully you've already set up what is your current strategy. So Candace, right now, what has been your strategy to get leads in the business?
So I work in the senior niche, and I'm not able to do that now for family reasons, but I was able to go to the senior networking events and create relationships there. And what happens oftentimes is the communities where people go when they have a life change, a lot of times they have a home to sell. And so to build relationships with those sales managers and the first point of contact that people see, also placement agents and so on. So that was my strategy. Now I just created a bunch of blogs about the senior space. I just interviewed a lender who specializes in the new reverse mortgages, which don't kick you out of your home. So that's been my main strategy. And then Meskula.
Awesome.
So
okay, very good. Now, do I have permission to encourage you to maybe like expand outside of that niche, or are you like, Jake, no matter what, that's just my niche, don't want to move and change from it?
it's just one spoke in the lead gen wheel. That's just my main one.
Awesome. The reason I asked that is that in every other business I've been in, I've been a huge proponent of niching down because I think that it gives you leverage in having a core thing that you can focus your efforts, your marketing, your attention on and build a brand around. In this business, I'm actually a really big fan of trying to geographically build a presence, because the challenge you could run into, Candace, I don't know for sure, but the challenge you could run into is that there may simply not be enough volume, turnover, opportunities for you to really extract a lot out of that specific niche. And it might be beneficial for you also to have some neighborhoods that you really focus on and target. Like you shared earlier when I said, how's the market? You're like neighborhood by neighborhood, house by house, right? I think that getting into neighborhoods is awesome. One of the biggest things that's helped me in this business was that first year when I did all those deals, there was a compounding effect because I was focused on a neighborhood that I was living in, and I was getting to know neighbors. As I was getting listings, more neighbors were taking note. As they were taking note, I was getting more listings on that street. Then it started to feel like that's the guy in this neighborhood who lists the houses because I see his signs everywhere, and there's got to be a reason for that. And it became a positive feedback loop where people started to look to me as the expert in that area, and it really helped me solidify that I was the guy. And then because I was getting those listings, I was getting the buyers that were interested in those houses being interested in the next listing that I was getting, and that helped me pick up more buyers, which helped me get their houses to sell when the time came. So I really think that geographically, if you focus even more on like, how could I geographically, not just with a niche of like new home, first-time home buyers, or people that are downsizing or upsizing, like those niches are good to have. But I do think that this is a geographic business. There's a reason probably a lot of the top agents in our respective markets all use billboard advertising. It's because they're geographically trying to be top of mind when people think about buying and selling, whatever the category is. So I would encourage you, Candace, like expand out into door knocking some areas there in your neighborhood. And if you're not comfortable with that, man, would I ever encourage you to do it? Because I do it. I encourage all my agents to do it. I'll be, like making over $1 million a year as an individual agent, and I'll keep knocking on doors for my open houses just to let people know that like, hey, maybe we've got a listing coming up in the neighborhood, or I've got buyers that want to move into this area. Have you thought about selling, right? And there's another video that I don't know if we recorded it or saved it anywhere else, Emmanuel, but in the last lesson, I talked all about door knocking and how much of a believer, how much that's built my business. I also have a full YouTube video on my channel that you can go check out where I dive deep into like, here's everything I do when it comes to door knocking. So awesome. Candace, really quickly, quickly. Any big takeaways for you going through this process today in terms of how it's impacting, or maybe not at all? Maybe that you're like, Jake, I've done this a million times.
Well, I have done this exercise, but I think sometimes when you're slow, it's really good to go back to the basics. So this was very, very helpful. And I also, I've been very resistant to door knocking, but I think what I'm going to do is partner up with someone and make it more fun. And
Love it.
I think I really need to focus on the consistency of a geographic farm. So thank you for that.
You know what? At the end of the day, Candace, the basics are what this business is built around. And there's a famous little diagram in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent that's like a triangle that's divided in half. And on the bottom, it's systems. And on the top, it's creativity. And what that shows is that when your base of your business for that triangle is systems, it has a wide, stable foundation. And then when you have the stability of systems in your business, which in this case, systems would be, I consistently door knock to generate, I do this to generate, and you are unwavering in the basics of how you lead gen and how you build your business. Then on top of that, you can place creativity, which is like maybe I'm going to try this marketing thing, this Instagram trend, I'm going to try this mailing idea, whatever it might be that's unique and novel that you don't build a system around. It's okay because you have a base. But as soon as you flip it upside down and your marketing is kind of sporadic and it's just creative and you do things here and there, but it's not consistent, then the pyramid is teetering and it's completely unstable. So I would definitely encourage you to like you're talking about, how do I go back to the basics and think about that? Just to relate to you, Candace, I'm constantly going back to this stuff to be like, am I doing the main things that I need to be doing? How many phone calls am I making every week? How many appointments am I actually going on? How many leads am I generating? If you don't know those numbers in your business for last week, I would say that you're blind to tracking the most important details of the business. It's like having a patient that's in the ICU that you need to monitor and you don't know what their heart rate is. You don't know their core metrics around their health. So thank you, Candace. That was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Okay, guys, I want to have one more person volunteer this who has a different revenue target than Candace does, so we can dive in and understand the numbers. I also want you to notice that at about Candace's target there, and forgive the names here, I'm just plugging this into our team stuff here, but with Candace's numbers that I put in here of 150, you'll notice that that's kind of like the bare minimum of how many appointments you can even go on a month. And that's why I encourage Candace to double that. Because when you start to break it down to like, I just need one lead a day, the dilemma there is that the day that you don't have one lead, you have 0 leads. And I would rather you be aiming for a higher target, even like 2, 3, 4 leads a day, because then you ask yourself different questions like, well, what do I need to do every week to get those leads? And it'll mean that there's more stability in your business, because I can say right now, guys, there are 0 weeks all of last year and even my first year in the business where I had 0 leads in the business, because I did this process and I was like, I need to lead generate every single day. There have been 0 weeks where I don't have a half dozen leads that come through the business. Okay. So hopefully that's really helpful for everybody, and just getting that perspective on like, what are my daily outputs? So anybody else, let's see if anybody else jumped in.
Sure. I'll jump in.
Let's go, Jessica. Good to meet you. Where are you joining from today?
Okay, I'm in Hollywood, Florida.
Jealous. Yep, absolutely jealous.
Yeah.
Amazing. And how long have you been in that market for selling real estate?
So I'm in my first year.
Congrats. Very exciting.
Thanks. I sold one house last year. Like this year, it hasn't been 24 months yet. I mean, 12 months. And I struggle with like my targets, and I don't know. I had this idea, like when I started, I want to do like 4 transactions a year to like, that was my goal. That's my goal for this year, to do like 4 transactions. I'm pulled all over the place because the average home price in my neighborhood is, in my like circle, is like $1 million. But then there's, I'm in Miami, so there's like multi-million-dollar properties, which is not for me. I was talking to someone, what she does to sell like $10 million houses. So I'm just like all over the place.
Okay, super cool. So let's get you not all over the place. let's get you directed. And just by the way, by a show of hands with you guys that are following along today, just throw your hand up in the chat, however you do that. Or ideally just like click the little icon below to put your hand up. If you're in a similar boat to Jessica, maybe some of you are, maybe some of you aren't, just drop a little thing so that I can see. I'm just going to scroll through and I'll look at everybody as you guys kind of mention that. Yep, we got some thumbs up. Multiple people raising their hands. Thank you guys for the transparency, Daniela, Riz. That's really, really helpful. Super cool. Okay, so we get a couple of people. If anybody else relates, drop your hand up. I'll be checking that out. Here's what I'd say right away. Yeah, more hands going up. Super cool. Okay, so here's what I would say for all of you who are trying to figure out, and even for those of you that are higher producers, pay close attention right now because you will at some point mentor somebody who's going to relate to where Jessica's at. So here's my feedback for you, Jessica. Number one, for you to do, you said 4 transactions, correct?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that's like 120 grand or so, all right, in terms of how much GCI, how much income you would generate for yourself at a $1 million price point. The house that you sold last year, Jessica, was it $1 million house?
It was 5 million, but I only got 1% off.
You only got what percentage?
1.5% on it.
Okay, that's okay. That's a freaking awesome sized sale. And how did you get that listing?
I represented the buyer.
Super cool. And how'd you pick up that buyer?
Just going to like a local, a different neighborhood. I went and to like an event and I met them and then we ended up talking.
Amazing. Okay, awesome. The reason I asked, by the way, guys, in case you're like, why are you asking all these questions? Because, man, I want more $5 million deals. I haven't even done a $5 million deal. I've sold all this real estate and I've done so much of it in the like $500,000 to $2 to $3 million category. I've done very little over that. Okay. I've done nothing over 3.3 million is my max. Okay. So awesome.
And I'm working on a deal. I'm working now. Got like, hopefully we want to list at like 235 and then they're buying like another house for like 2.2. So
love it.
Working on that.
Love it. Okay, awesome. So let's leave that price point being $1 million because it's going to be an average. Like for example, you did one deal, amazing. This year, you're talking about those 2 transactions. We need way more information, like the flipping of the coin, to start to see the regression to the mean. And what I mean by that is it takes a lot of information for us to start to actually have patterns that we can find useful for us to make predictions about the future. So example is you told me I went to an event, Jake, and I met somebody and I got a deal done. Once you've done like 20 or more transactions, then we can start to look at the patterns of like, well, how many people did you get from events? Or how many people did you get from door knocking or open houses or sign listing calls or Facebook advertising or Google pay-per-click? Like, and we can start to really look at everything and start to go, oh, cool. Like percentage of your business, like 8 of your transactions, more than a third of your business came from X, right? And that's where we can start to. So the reason I'm saying all this, Jessica, we need you to do more volume. And that's why you're asking me, because you're like, I'm trying to figure it out. Number one reason you're flailing right now, trying to grab onto something and figure out what to do is because your target is actually way too low. Like, check this out. If your goal is to do 4 deals a year, right? That's like 0 deals a month because it's not even enough to show up on the radar of how many deals do you want to do a month. I'm guessing, Jessica, that you have another full-time job. Is that right?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you have a part-time job?
I'd like this to be my part-time job, but it's definitely a full-time job.
Okay. So all of that to me sounds wrong. And I say that in the kindest way possible. This should be your full-time job. It should be making you way more money than you need to so that it could be quote unquote part-time, but it should be your full-time commitment. And the thing with real estate is it compounds. It's like when you try to do a little bit of it, totally the Pareto principle. Are you familiar with the 80-20 rule, Jessica?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So the 80-20, for those of you who aren't familiar, is essentially this principle that this guy, Vilfredo Pareto, an Italian economist way back in like the 1700s or something, that he figured out that he noticed, which was he was looking at his tomato garden and he realized that 80% of all the tomatoes, they only came from 20% of the plants. So essentially, he could have thrown away 80% of his garden and he still would have had 80% of the outcome. This is showing you that things are exponential, they're not linear. And then he looked around at the wealth distribution in Italy and he realized, oh my gosh, 20% of the people own 80% of the real estate in Italy. So there's this theme. This is often called the Matthew principle as well, because Jesus says in the book of Matthew in the Bible, whether you're religious or not, check this out. He says that to him who has much, even more will be given. And to him who has little, even what he has will be taken away from him. And we see this trend everywhere. This is the problem right now in the States with like the disappearing middle class, right? It's like people are either wealthy or they're struggling. And the reason this is important, Jessica, for you, that's really practical, is that this little formula setup equation on a yearly basis doesn't actually know what to do with your 4 deals a year. Because monthly, it's like, well, that's not even a deal a month. So it's like a deal every quarter, right? So I'd rather see you. And what happens is this, by the way, if my goal was only to do 4 deals a year, Jessica, it would actually be really hard. And here's why it would be really hard. It's because either I would do those 4 deals in the first few weeks of the year, and then I would stop selling real estate the rest of the year. And then because if I had just had to hit 4, okay, it's like I would do those in the first month. And then what would happen is to do no more deals, I'd have to do no more work. And then in like November, December, I'd have to start working really hard to drum up the attention to do those 4 transactions again in sometime throughout the year. Now, if I all that heat and that energy. And it's like if you're trying to warm a house, if that house is already warm, it's easy for you to maintain the temperature. But if you let the temperature drop all the way down and then you got to heat the house back up to like an average temperature that you want, your furnace has to work extra hard and then it can shut off. But then the temperature is going to drop all the way down and then it's going to work really hard again.
So like, I hear you because I make cold calls in the mornings and just to like get to my 4, but now I have like so many leads and so many follow-ups that from my 1 hour, like 4 days a week, that it's like, oh my, you know what I mean? It's just not, it's hopefully going to be more than that because it's not possible to like not be more.
Super cool. Okay. I love it. So here's what we're going to do. Just like with Candace, Jessica, I'm going to raise your target. Okay. And I'm going to use the, like for you in your market, it's actually really cool because you're selling some expensive stuff and that should open up even more doors for you to sell more expensive stuff in those price brackets. What's scaring you is that when you're up against someone like me who has budget to invest in marketing of those listings, whether or not they sell, it's harder for you to win against me because I'm willing to spend more. So that is your dilemma. And I appreciate and understand that when it comes to listing, like you mentioned your friend with her $10 million listing, it's like, that's actually really stressful because staging is really expensive. Those clients are going to expect more because you're getting so much more money from the commission and everything's a little bit more challenging, right? It takes way longer, etc. So here's what I would encourage you to do. Let's go, even if your goal was 250, okay? Now we're looking at 8 deals and that's getting closer to 1 deal a month. So I really want to just see that we're at like 1 deal a month for you in terms of your target. So for you to do a deal a month, you have to sell something like, we're getting closer. It's probably easier.
Like I could choose to go for a higher price point. Like, you know, the one neighbor's at 2.2 and the other neighbor's at 1 million. So like I could focus on higher price points. Or
yeah, and look at that, right? If we drop the price point down, or we drop the price point up, sorry, to an average of $1.5 million, okay? Now you're making 300K and you're just doing 7 deals, and it's like you're getting more results. My encouragement though is I actually want to see you doing more deals because the agents who are like on average probably selling the most in your area, they're selling a lot of lower price points also because they're giving themselves the benefit of more opportunities to sell houses than you aim for 7 at $1.5 million and one of them doesn't sell. And now your income, you've lost 1/7 of your income. That's why it's so scary to rely on those smaller numbers is because if one of them doesn't pan out, then you're crushing your potential. So you want to aim for like, I want to aim to do a transaction every month. That's a great goal to start with because it's going to help you have more clarity around what to do every day. So just to return to this for you, Jessica, right now, if we're at like 300K in GCI, that's essentially a deal every other month for you, which is super cool. That feels very doable to me. You've got a buyer and a seller right now. Your goal is that buyer. Here's an example of what you can do with just your one client, okay? When they list their house for sale and you're representing them to sell that house, you can go and door knock every single house in that surrounding area and meet all the neighbors and let them know why you're selling the house, what you're going to be selling it for, would they like to be updated when the listing photos go up, ask them how long they've lived in the neighborhood for, etc. Okay? Then when you have that listing, you're going to go, how many pieces of content can I create from this listing? I could do one of those sped up walkthrough tours where I could get a friend to come film me on my cell phone, cost me $0 except my time, and I'll buy my friend a drink. They're going to follow me around through the house. I'm going to shoot it on Instagram and I'm going to speed it all up and make it one of those fast walkthrough videos with a cool song. Then I'm going to shoot a photo in front of the house and say, guys, I'm listing this house next week. It's amazing. I can't wait for you to see it. And you're going to just think of all of the ways you could market that one house because it's your primary listing. And then what happens is when you're going out and you're meeting people in the neighborhood and they go to look up that house, or you share your Instagram with them, or you share whatever, your Facebook, they see how hard you're working to market the house. That's going to stand out. Then you're going to do open houses every single weekend on that $2 million listing. And when you do the open house, you're going to do the same thing. Photo in front of a flag, buy one big open house flag on Amazon, spend the $100, best $100 you'll ever spend. People will show up and be like, this is awesome. You got flags out in front of your open house. The neighbors in the neighborhood will be like, wow, this agent's hustling. They're like doing an open house every weekend. They've got treats and snacks there. It's like really optimize what it is that you have, because as soon as you have a listing, you have leverage. You're the king of the hill where people are coming to you to show the house. It's like, do everything you can do. And then with your buyers, you can go and door knock the neighborhoods of the houses that they're interested in. If they like a house in a neighborhood.
But I am doing that. I'm just doing it over the phone because I can get there more.
No, go knock. Can you knock on doors? Are you allowed to?
Yeah, it's a little hot here sometimes, but I could do it.
Amazing. The fact that it's hot means no one else is out doing it, and you're going to stand out that much more. There's just less competition, right?
You'd rather see me knock on doors than making calls.
Every single day of the week times 10.
Really?
Here's why, Jessica. Okay. You are put together, right? You're an attractive person to go knock on a door, use that to your advantage. And I'm saying that in the kindest way possible. Like, I'm a young guy who dresses nice in a suit. When I knock on a door, people are like, who's this well put together guy knocking on my door? Like, they're curious because they're like, this guy's working it. If you're like, Jake, I don't think I'm the most attractive person, or you're someone else out there watching this being like, I don't think that I have a certain benefit. Go put on a nice suit, buy yourself a nice wardrobe, a nice suit, go knock on doors. People will treat you different because you look like a professional, which you are. Okay. So for you, Jessica, here's what happens when you knock on a door. Number one, you're real. Okay. You're real in front of them, and you're not just someone on a phone who they can hang up on in 2 seconds. It's way harder to slam a door in someone's face than it is to hang up on somebody. Okay. Number two is when you're in front of them, they can see you. And if you're smiling and you're kind and you're warm, they're going to feel a higher likelihood to reciprocate that back towards you than if you're just on a phone call. Okay. The other detail is that when you meet people, they're going to remember you more, because when they see you in person, they're seeing you. That's another sense that's engaged when you're at their door. Okay. So all of these things are absolutely things that I think are going to give you an advantage. Last time I was in Florida, Jessica, I was vacationing in Las Olas with my wife, Helen, and I went door knocking in Florida, like breaking every kind of rule. If you watch this today, please don't report me. I didn't actually try to solicit anybody's business, but I knocked on doors and said, hey, my wife and I are looking to move to this area. I'm actually a real estate agent in Canada, and I'm like a top selling agent. I'm not expecting you to sell your house. I actually just want to knock on your door and say, is this a nice neighborhood to live in? And I had a bunch of conversations. All those people followed me on Instagram. Okay. And it's like, you can build a business so fast that way. So last point there, Jessica, you're the only person out doing it. Yeah, maybe there's like a couple other people that have knocked on the door in the last little bit, but I guarantee you when you make a phone call, the reason it's less effective is it's so much more competitive and everybody's doing it. Does that make sense? Did I persuade you at all toward why it might be a good idea to knock on doors?
Yes, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I am still like trying to put it all together. Let's say there's a neighborhood that I used to live in, Miami Beach, that's like higher price point. Should I focus on that neighborhood, or if I live an hour away, then I should focus on where I live?
Super cool. So your question there was, do I focus on my neighborhood or do I go an hour away, was essentially your question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to, every time you get a listing or an appointment, have to drive further, or would you rather drive closer?
Like obviously be closer. Yeah.
Yeah. Why is it so obvious? Why would you want to work closer to where you live?
But the higher price points are in these like gated HOA communities that I can't really door knock.
Yeah. Do you have to do higher price points? Because you were mentioning that you're also slightly intimidated by those higher price points.
No, I'm not intimidated by 2 million, 3 million. I'm not intimidated by that. Like I have an off market that I need to learn how to move to market, a bunch of them, and that's 5.5 million. So
yeah. So my encouragement is like whatever price point allows you to do more activity and make more moves, start there. You don't have to end there. Like if you're today going, Jake, I'm trying to move into a higher price point bracket, I disagree with the advice that you should focus on lower price point brackets. My advice would be when you're getting started, your best friend is volume. Like my first year, you know how I said I made 750 grand and I did 35 transactions? If I could have done 300 transactions my first year and had a team to do it and whatever and survived and have done a good job, which is like feels very, very challenging. I'm tempted to say an impossibility, but like I've heard these stories of people that go to do crazy amounts of volume, or even just 100 transactions. If I could have done 100, but only taken home 200 grand in actual profit, whereas I might have made like 400 grand in profit, I would have made less money for sure to have done more volume, because what happens when you do more volume is you learn more. You pick up more clients that are going to turn into exponentially more referrals and more business when you do a good job. It would force you to create and find better systems for your business. It would teach you more about trends in your marketplace, patterns, like everything. So my encouragement to you would be go to the areas that you can door knock and you'll build your business. And what will happen is you'll continue to build your business in some of those other categories where clearly you're meeting people at the higher price points. Keep doing that. Keep doing what you're doing. But in the meantime, when you meet those people, if you can also say to them, like, hey, I've actually sold 20 houses this year, your level of credibility with those people as well is going to go way through the roof, because they're going to be like, man, you're making stuff happen. You're moving and shaking. What do you think of that, Jessica?
What I don't like about that is that I don't enjoy the price point. Like it's not pretty. The higher price points are more fun to work with, and it's an easier, like people aren't as like, oh, the pool heater's broken, let's fight over it. No, we're not. We'll just replace it, you know?
Yep, absolutely. What I would say is that in the price points that I've typically worked, Jessica, like here's what we're trying to solve for you, right? Number one, you can continue to do less transactions at a higher price point and try to keep working up that ladder. What I think you're going to need, from my perspective, to continue to win the higher price point listings is you're going to need more of a budget to set aside to put towards doing marketing in a way that's going to be competitive with whoever the agents are in your area that are winning the majority of those listings. And it's like if you constantly are struggling to get enough of those listings to do them the process, like what they deserve in terms of all the marketing and energy and effort and output and everything, and the budget on advertising and whatever it is you need to do to maximize the potential of that listing for that client, then in some ways you might be better off to like go through and try and get more transactions at a lower price point in order to build up some more reserves and be building your business. And
Well,
then
how much marketing budget are we talking about? Like
it depends. It depends on the listing, right? It depends on your market. It depends on what's going on.
1,500. Like, what are we talking about?
Say that again.
Like $2,000, 1,500.
Okay, let's say you get a $3 million listing and the house is vacant. Are you going to stage that house, or are you just going to leave it empty and virtually stage it? Those questions determine massively different budgets. I just spent $5,000 staging a house that's under $2 million because it was empty. And that was my competitive advantage over other agents who were like, I'm just going to take photos and like, we'll virtually stage it. And I was like, no, that's a bad idea. If you want to get more money for this house and I'm trying to do the right thing for the client, I need to spend more money staging the house. Okay. If that house was double the size and it was $3 million, now my staging budget could be 10 grand, and that would be reasonable. And then that doesn't include media costs. And maybe like for us, we run Facebook advertising on all of our listings because I want to get more buyers from it. I want to get more visibility for my clients from it. Then I want to run open houses, and those open houses require a bit of budget. Maybe I need signage, I need whatever. So it's like, it all depends how you want to do it, Jessica. If you want to like get a listing and try to put as little into it as possible, from my perspective, what happens is that the people who come along and build more of an operation around those price points will win sooner, and it'll be potentially harder to compete against them. But It
No, I
sounds
hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. There's all these things that I didn't think of, and I hear I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, listen, there's nothing wrong with being like, Jake, I want to go after higher price points. My encouragement to you is awesome. If you want to go do that, just make sure you know exactly what you're up against, because right now it sounds like you're getting out of these two clients that you've had, it's not a large enough sample size to know predictably that each time you get a listing presentation, it'll be this much of a home run for you, where you might have, like, so far you've got one seller that you're working with, the other was a buyer side, and this current seller will also be a buyer. So out of that one seller that you have, maybe you haven't had the intensity of the grilling and the questioning and the challenging to be like, how are you going to help me stand out in marketing my house? And once you get those questions, that's where things can change quite a bit. Awesome. This is good though, Jessica. I love, like, you can hit me with these questions anytime. I love this stuff because I think about it nonstop. So it's awesome. By the way, Marzena, if I'm saying that right, Marzena, you asked a question where you said, what if the commission changes? Drop a comment and let me know what commission percentage you want to see with these figures that we've been talking through today. And I can show you how significantly it changes, because, you know, a 2% commission versus a 3% commission is 30% more. That's the way to think about it. It's 1/3 more, or actually to go from 2% to 3% is 50% more in terms of what your commission will actually be, right? Oh, you know what, Chris? That's an awesome question on the NAR ruling. I feel like there's so many people out there talking about it at levels where it's more relevant. I'm not seeing yet in Canada the level of impact of this new ruling or this new conversation regarding buyers' commissions not being included. I'm not seeing that happening just yet here. And what I would say to that is really simple. It's going to thin out the industry. It's going to mean the industry is going to be more competitive. You're going to have to provide more value to your clients. You're going to likely have to focus on more of a listing business, which is what this business has actually always been about, is like, get listings. That's how you get leverage. That's how you control the commission conversation. And by control it, I mean control it for yourself. And if you're on the buying side, you're going to have to fight harder to prove value. You're going to have to make a case for why people truly should work for you, and you should be working for them on the buying side, and why they should work with you. It's like, it's just amplifying why it's important that you add value. That's my quick take on that. So I hope that that's helpful. All right, guys, that was awesome. I loved Candace and Jessica having two totally different, in some respect, approaches, where we've got Candace doing the $500,000 listings and doing a bunch of them. And it's like, how do we amplify that? And then we've got Jessica over there being a total boss, being like, I just did a $5 million house for my first sale, and now I got a $2 million buyer and a seller. And it's like, what are the best paths to take? My encouragement is upfront. I think nothing is a better educator than being in the field and trying your best to do volume and get out there and move and shake. And then you can also pivot and go after whatever other categories you want to go after, because you want to play the odds game and you want more opportunity to win. So cheering you guys on big time. Thank you so much. And I am so excited for more of these guys. So thanks so much. Looking forward to it. Good seeing everybody.